everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the CAGA Secondary Schools podcast. I'm Katie, and CJ and Ashley are here with me today. In today's episode, we'll be discussing how to manage coverage for your school. We're excited to share our insights and experiences. Before we jump into the conversation, let's quickly break down what we'll be covering in today's episode.
Thank you, Katie. So we're going to start out with how athletic training coverage has evolved over the years. It's drastically different than what it has been 15, 20 years ago. So we'll kind of chat about that. And then we're going to go into how to prioritize coverage. And then we're going to finish up with managing coverage across multiple venues. So really excited to jump right in. Over the past 15-ish years, there's been a lot of change in how coverage in athletic training for the secondary school has been. So I know some of my colleagues would always talk about how there would be one athletic trainer for like 4 or 5 big schools in the county that I'm in. And now we mostly have one athletic trainer in charge of a single school. So I'm curious, what does that look like for you guys? I'm relatively newer to the profession. So it's always been one athletic trainer per school. Have you guys had to cover multiple schools on your own? No,
I have not, but I want to expand your timeline to like the past 30 years, not
Agreed.
15, because
Yeah, I think
Ashley
it
and
was
I have been
longer.
doing this for that
For
long.
15, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was not quite that short-staffed, at least in the metro area for that long.
Yep.
But yes, I have heard of people covering multiple schools, but I was lucky enough to only ever have to be at one school at one time.
Okay. Same with you, Ashley.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll change that to about 30 years ago. It's changed a lot and it's kind of settled down in the last 15. Fair to say? Okay.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. All right. So looking at the KSI Atlas survey, which they have, it's just great information. At Colorado public high schools, so not looking at the private ones because there's only like 41 that are listed on there. So it's kind of not negligible, but kind of negligible. There's 319 public schools in Colorado in the high school, secondary school setting. 211 of those have athletic training coverage. 102 have no coverage at all. Of that, only 103, so less than half of the 211 are full-time athletic trainers, and the other 108 are part-time athletic trainers. So we still have a lot of ground to cover on that, and that just means when we're having some teams travel to us, we might not have an athletic trainer coming to help us at football. We might have teams going to venues that are close to us, but might not have an athletic trainer. So I think it's interesting to see, even with how much ground we've made in the past 30 years, we still have half of our schools, or we still have a third of our schools with no coverage at all. And then half of the schools that do have coverage don't have a full-time athletic trainer, which is crazy to me, but that's for another episode. So want to kind of get into some differences between schools, because where you're at drastically changes how your coverage looks. So for instance, where I used to work, my fields would be on campus, but pretty far away and very spread out. And I had to take a golf cart because it was on the side of a mountain. And so your fields could be farther away or they could be off campus. Your athletic training facility might be in an area without service. I think a lot of us are kind of in dungeons. I know Katie was trying to text us the other day and realized it didn't send an hour later because she's in a dungeon in her ATF. So that's pretty common, which is kind of crazy because we're supposed to be like the central hub of communication to all of our coaches, but half the time we can't get a text out. Fields might not have an area for equipment storage. So not every field's created equal. You might literally just be in a field with no building there. So how do you manage coverage on that if you have to take your supplies everywhere and you don't have anything on site? So Katie, what have your schools looked like? Have you been to a school where it's really spread out, or is it more compact, or do you have practices off campus a lot? How's that look for you?
Well, I've run the gambit of all of those. Most of the time things are easy-ish to get to, but at one time I didn't have a golf cart, so hauling your stuff was like 3 trips to get out to one game. Like the soccer game was pretty close, but getting my stuff to the soccer game was not an easy task. So whenever everybody's booster clubs decided everybody needed a golf cart, thank you. It's amazing and I love it. I've also shown up to like PRN coverage, not so much high school, and gotten there and they're like, you'll be right there. And I'm like, right where? That's
At
just
that dirt
a
patch?
spot. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, am I supposed to just put my lawn chair up there? Like, how are they gonna know where I am? And they're like, well, I'm like, we don't have a table. Like, this is what, you know? So yeah, it has changed significantly. I feel like as we've evolved over the past 15 years at least, they're like more cognizant of how much equipment we carry, how much is required. Is there a water key? Is there a water source? How do we get there? How do you travel with ice? How do you travel with a tent for weather? Like all the things. It's definitely gotten significantly better. And I would say this is gets into the weeds, but school districts, as they look at expanding fields and putting in turfs and putting in this and that and ADA compliance and all of those things, when they're looking at fields, they kind of look at, oh, okay, should we put in more like of a space? Do we need an outdoor box for the AED? Because now that I think KSI and the American Heart Association, and they're doing a lot with AEDs and making sure, because that has been so public in the news, making sure AEDs are accessible within 1 to 3 minutes of the every venue. Having those outdoor AEDs makes them kind of more cognizant of like, oh, well, if we had a water line, like we could have easier coverage outside at our fields for the athletic trainers. So, and I have seen multiple school districts that have been start considering like, oh, well, we could just put like a little room out here for you. Now they would be like the people who all have closets inside. It would be a closet outside, but at least it's a space. So I don't know. It seems like we're improving. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who feels like it's improving, I guess.
Yeah, how about you, Ashley?
Yeah, I've also worked in a gambit, and my most difficult school, it was a smaller school, but the fields were very spread out, as in like my softball field was like 5 miles down a very busy road, and my baseball and tennis courts were down like a mile down that road at a different school. Like they were at the elementary schools, and so managing that coverage was so hard. And then I had, the artificial turf for like soccer at my school and the football stadium, well, football field at my school, but even the football field was down this giant hill. And so I couldn't take any of my things down that way. I had to like drive my car all the way around to the campus and then come in some shady back gates. Um, so that was the hardest school I had to manage coverage. And like for once, I was called to softball for an emergency, and I had to start driving down the main road during rush hour traffic. And of course, the ambulance got there way before me. Like, so it's very hard to manage like the spread out schools like that.
Yeah, my very first year, which was very unfortunate. I graduated in 2019 with my master's and got a job. And the school I got to were still implementing turf fields for their softball and football fields, or their athletic fields. Sorry. So I got there and we have no fields for fall sports. So we were trying to figure out where to go. And football team was practicing 20 minutes north at a facility. My softball team was practicing somewhere else. I don't know where they were practicing. I don't remember. And I was like, I have no fields. Everyone is spread out so far. It was bad. So that was really tough to figure out, like, okay, one, we don't even have EAPs for these fields because we've never practiced there before. We had one was 20 minutes north and one was 30 minutes north. So they were like really far away. I'm like, how am I going to manage this? How do I get there in any kind of reasonable time? And I still had teams practicing like at the local middle school, which was 5-10 minutes away, throughout my entire time at that school. And so it's difficult to figure out coverage when you have all those different venues. It's not easy. I think the ideal is it's all compact and everything's there and yay, nice and sweet, but it's not. And I've helped cover that school that Ashley was talking about, and their softball field is so obnoxious to get to. So it makes it a little bit difficult. So how do we have that discussion of where should we be, when should we be there, and how do we prioritize what this coverage is? Ashley, we're going to start with you. When we're looking at contact level versus quantity of athletes versus the emergency risk, how do we navigate those three things and say, okay, we're going to provide the most care and coverage at this site when you have to consider all those factors?
Yeah, I think oftentimes all three of those things kind of go together, because your contact level, like the which sport has the most contact. Well, for most of us that's football. And that also happens to be the sport with the biggest number of athletes usually. And then that's also the biggest emergency risk. So yeah, all three of those things usually do coincide. So usually it is the prioritizing the contact sports, and then the all the other sports, you gotta give them a good med kit and tell their coaches that they need to use their best first aid skills and call me.
Katie, how about you?
Yeah, we always used to say the phone number you need if Katie's not on site, the phone number you need is 911. If you don't need that phone number, they can wait till tomorrow. Um, but I am the opposite of Ashley. Every year for a very large number of years, our rivalry football game was on the same day as cross country first
Oh,
cross country meet of the year, and it was the first weekend, Labor Day weekend, the hottest one. There's always weather. There's always something, and that starts at 4, and football starts at 7, and so and there was a number of years where it was just me. And so I would call the other team and be like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. You're going to tape 2 football teams today because I'm not going to get there till right at game start time." And you have to prioritize, one, because of weather, but two, because you can have 2,000 runners at a cross country meet and
mhm.
the first meet of the year, and it's an open, and there's 6 races, and it gets tricky because cross country, in theory, should be pretty low risk, low contact, low all the things, but when you have weather involved, it changes things drastically. Um, it always happens the crossover, and you're like, okay, well, postseason takes priority because they're the ones still going. But then football decide to practice in the stadium instead of on site at the school. And it's like, do we leave the all the other teams uncovered just to cover football practice? Should we do that? I've had that discussion before where, like, even it's just the freshman team is practicing, but it is freshman football, but there's a varsity soccer game offsite at the stadium or offsite at whatever, and how do you get there? And then yeah, specifically your teams that just don't practice on campus. Like, I've had a lacrosse coach call me and be like, we've got a dislocated shoulder. Can you come help us? And I'm like, no, I cannot. Either you are going to do that yourself or you're going to call 911 for him because someone has to get him to get it reduced, whether that's you or at the hospital. This kid it had been a multiple dislocations kid who could talk his coach through reducing his own shoulder, which is a whole different situation. But I've multiple times talked someone through it from offsite, and they're like, "Can't you come?" And I'm like, "You guys, by the time I get there, I'm not going to be as effective as you want me to be. Either they're well enough for you to put them in a car and get them to me because that's half the time, or they need to go the opposite direction because the hospital is over there, not over here." Um, and that's kind of how I provide it, I guess. It's like the 911 thing gets people every time. Like, either you need my phone number or you need 911, and they'll see me tomorrow. Like, I don't that's
That
that's
was
where we
always
are.
my line. I'd always be like, "Hey, but what do we do if somebody gets injured?" I'm like, "Well, if it's bad, don't call me. Call 911 and then shoot me a text."
Right. Let me know
Like,
after.
yeah. And if it's not 911 worthy, then they're stable and they're okay and they can see me the next day. They're not going to die. And I think coaches are very much like they care about the athlete's health, but they also care about minimizing time lost in their sport. So I think there's like, we need to manage this from like right now. And I think educating on like, hey, the first 24 hours is pretty much just pain-free movement, manage pain, manage swelling, like, and they're going to be okay. There's no like major thing that you can do to be like, oh man, if we had done this in the first 24 hours, you would have been back a week earlier. Like, it's just
Right.
not how that works.
I think a big thing when CHASA mandated that all schools had to turn in venue specific EAPs, had a big effect on at least the athletic directors. Like, it might not have affected coaches at all, but the athletic directors suddenly were like, every venue, like everyone. And mine at the time, he was like, "I'm going to ask you this. I know you have the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are you going to make my life easier? Do we have these?" And I was like, "Of course we have those." He was like, how many do we have?" And I was like, "We have 17." And he was like, "We don't even have 17 programs." And I was like, "But we have 17 sites."
Yeah, that's a good point, and making sure you have a good plan for all your different sites. And oftentimes that's not something your athletic directors are even thinking about. And so yeah, it's they are lucky to have us. Let's just say that.
It is nice when we can surprise them and be like, yeah, look how good I am. I got this
Mhm.
under control. But yeah, the reason I wrote down that question is I was thinking about cross country and football. And, we have, I think it's so vital for athletic trainers to be on site because there's not a requirement to have ice or cold water immersion at these events that could have heat stroke, which is a conversation for another time. But how do we manage? That's a life threatening situation. There's also life threatening situations in football. Um, if we have, let's say, a lower contact, but still contact, and we have something that like it's a hot day and we might need to immerse somebody in a CWI, or if, like Katie said, are we going to cover a single game and leave 200 athletes on campus uncovered during practices just to cover 22 kids who are on the field at once? Like it's an interesting conversation to navigate to say, okay, I'm going to go cover 22 kids rather than 200. So kind of want that's why we're here today, to have that conversation and kind of give some context and what we've done in our careers to navigate that. Ashley, when we're looking at all these sports, what I know football, okay, we're going to start with that. Football is the highest risk. What do you view the next highest risk? What would you kind of classify your coverage like 1, 2, 3, 4? Football's priority, and then what?
Oh, and so for me, I would often think, which team is my next needy? Like which which team is always in my office the next? And I think per season and even per year that tends to change for me. And it makes me really nervous when I have a team that's super needy and super injury prone and I have to leave them to go cover something else. I'm always like, it's gonna happen when
I'm
I
going to get
leave.
a call. Yeah.
Yep, the second I leave, they're gonna have to call 911. Like, um, but so that one does change a lot. And I think in the normal priority risk, what is it? Is it lacrosse that's next?
Yeah. I mean, it's different season,
Ice
but yeah,
hockey.
Different seasons, yeah. Ice
that's
hockey is
yeah.
a big one. And ice hockey is another hard one because that's off, like
Mm-hmm.
way off
Always
campus,
off site.
Always.
Yep.
usually
Yeah.
late at night. Like, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes there's no like conflict because they are so late.
But we
But
don't
yeah,
recover their practices because how
no,
would you
we
do it?
never. Nope. Yeah, you
Well, and
can't
how can you
cover.
be available at 9:30 at night like
Right.
there is a discussion to be had about work-life balance. Should
Right.
they self-manage and then
Absolutely.
you can help take care of the athlete, but
Right.
should you be available for emergencies? Like, is it realistic to be available for emergencies at that late of the night every night?
Right. But to Ashley's point, I think it goes soccer next. I think your next one would be soccer. Um and then but here's where I would say, and I always get a little flack for it, but cheerleading is right up there. And if they're on
Mm-hmm.
site practicing, man, the amount of times it gets asked all the time, right? Like, what do you think you see the most injuries in? And I throw cheerleading at the top of that list all the time
Yep.
because either they're throwing someone in the air or they're catching someone who's falling out of the air. And not they listen, they're coached on it. They do it year round too, but you got to catch someone who's going up and coming down when you're throwing them. And it's a whole human body. So when they fall, if they fall out of a stunt, they're falling hard.
Onto
And
other
they
people usually too.
onto other people, and usually they and I for a long time, I was like, "Listen, if the dance team calls me, we call 911. These are equal opportunity phone calls. They call me, we call 911 together. That is how dance goes." Not always anymore, but for a long time, that was how it was because they didn't really need anything, didn't really need anything. Now we have a catastrophic emergency occurring. And so it's always interesting that we have this kind of delineated list that came from research purposes, but not always. We have
Exactly.
children who are injury prone
Yep.
and children who they are adorable and sweet
Yep.
childs.
Yeah.
However,
I know because I know that soccer is the next on that list, but
Mhm.
in my opinion, it's just not. Soccer can get away without me very like 99% of the time. They're fine. And so it is for me, it's the cheer, it's my gymnastics, and even my volleyball gets hurt way more than soccer. So
And
yeah, I think
my
soccer
professor
becomes
in
a spectacle. Sorry,
Oh yeah.
CJ.
No, you're
But
fine.
soccer is a spectacle, right? They go down on the field and then they're just out there, and it's a big
Yeah.
field. It's a big
Yeah.
field and nobody's there and everybody, and then here I come. I look like I'm strolling, but I walk out to my injuries, so then they're rolling around for longer. Like I my soccer teams have always been needy, so soccer has to be covered for me. But I'll luckily soccer usually plays later in the evening for me, so it's easier to get to their games.
And I was going to say, my professor would always, every question we'd ever ask, he'd be like, well, it depends. And that is like the truest answer for all of athletic training is it depends.
Right.
Because there are like, we could have this clear list and we're going to go through some research that helps you identify which ones are the highest risk. And it pretty much lines up with what we see anecdotally. But if you have an athlete who has seizures and needs to be administered with Milazadam, is that it? The nasal spray?
Misa something, I thought.
Something like that. Or if you have somebody who's a hemophiliac, or if you have somebody who has POTS or who has like seizures but doesn't have medication that would need to be managed, that's a relatively high risk. Are we going to prioritize that over a higher contact sport because we have a high risk athlete on that team? That needs to be considered. Are we also going to take in the perception? Like Katie said, if somebody goes down on a field and we're not there because we're at another game, and they're going down left and right and they're rolling around and they're fine, but the parents just see that, well, school has Katie, or the administration, hey, we have Katie, but like we're having a lot of parents complain that there's no athletic trainer at this game. And you're like, I saw all 5 of them after the game. They're all fine. Their perception is still that we're letting kids just roll around 10, 15, 20 yards down the field, screaming like they just broke their femur. And then they're getting up and running off. But for that 20 yards of rolling, people are like, oh, how can we not have coverage here? And that shouldn't play a factor in our medical decision making. But at the end of the day, it's also, we're contracted and paid to provide coverage, and we're providing service to the community, and the community needs to see the value. And if they see that we're not there, so that plays a little bit of a factor too. Ashley, you just have something to add?
I don't remember what it was.
It was about I think you raised your hand when I was talking about the seizure, hemophilia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for those athletes, those specific high risk athletes with special conditions, the best way I manage those is I treat the coach to basically be my new assistant, and I train them on everything they need to know to help me deal with this athlete.
I think
Because,
that's important
yes.
because you're not at all the away games. I mean,
Nope.
aside from football, most athletic trainers in Colorado do not have the availability to travel with every team. It's just not feasible. So if you're not there every game, they have to be trained, specifically the coach of that kid, not even just like the
Yes.
program, that
No.
coach of that kid. And
Yeah, whoever's with
preferably
them.
two. Preferably there's an assistant coach or that kid's best friend. Somebody's got to be trained.
Yeah.
Yes.
And usually they have their parents will make a
Sure,
point to
yeah.
come to the game too, so you can sometimes rely on that
But
as
a
well.
referee will not allow a parent out of the stands to come help a kid a lot of the time. Like
Yeah.
we can get into how to navigate conflict another time. But like the referees are there for safety. You can't have a random human coming onto your field, but they don't know, and they are unaware of the situation. They're going to try to help manage as best they can, which can delay care in the situation of the parent having to be the one to provide care.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into some research, because that's my favorite thing to talk about. So looking at, I believe, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced this, Rachel et al. Et al. From 2008. They titled an epidemiologic comparison of high school sports injuries sustained in practice and competition. And they compared practice and competition injury rates and patterns in 5 boys sports, which were football, soccer, basketball, wrestling, and baseball, and 4 girls sports, which were soccer, volleyball, basketball, and softball. They found that the rate of injury per 1,000 athlete exposures was higher in competition at 4.63 than in practice at 1.69. Katie, does that feel accurate to what you see in your everyday job.
No, I hate that. Why? Where did this
I
come
know.
from?
I was like, that does
I'm
not
so
line up
mad
with what
about
I'm
it right now.
thinking.
I did not read this particular article before we started today, and I am upset about it.
I know. Just
Just
watching
so
Katie's
everybody is
eye
aware.
bug out. I was like,
I know. I was
oh.
like, this is gonna be good.
Listen, you take at least 5 times the reps in practice than you do in a game. We won't even. You guys, I give this speech on a daily basis. There's no way you take if you are not practicing at the intensity that you're playing at, then we are failing on so many levels about how athletics works. But there is no way that you are taking that many more reps in practice and not getting injured just as frequently. It feels like it's more, you know about it more when it happens in a game. But I feel like if you strain a hamstring during a game, you can't keep going. If you strain a hamstring during practice, we probably don't report it because the next day they're fine and they're jumping back in. A minor hamstring strain, just to be clear, or a minor ankle sprain, things that they like walk off the next day. But during a game, they just can't go into it, you know? So the minor stuff doesn't get reported as much during practice as it does during a game. I don't agree. I think practice, there are much more reps in practice. Practices are 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and they're 5 times a week versus 1 game a week or 2 games a week. Like
I think
not a hill I want to die on, but I believe practice is more injury prone.
I think this is a classic case of not all evidence is created equal. You can read between the lines. The way I look at this is I say, okay, 1,000 athlete exposures and I have 4.5 injuries in games. That's in a game, right? Okay, and then I have 1.7, so we'll call it 1.5 injuries in practice per 1,000 athlete exposures. But I'm going to have a lot more exposures at practice because I have a lot more teams versus games. I have a lot more athletes going. So
and
I
participants,
could cover one
right?
game
If
and
you
see
have
5
15
injuries
basketball players.
Yeah. Your athlete exposures are going to boop. So in a game, I might only have 1,000 athlete exposures because there's only so many athletes. But in practice, I might have 4,000 athlete exposures during that practice. So I'm going to have 4 times the amount, which is now higher than a competition for that one. So that's kind of how I read between the lines on that. So
we will be covering how to read research at some point, people.
Yes. I'm actually very excited for that episode. But that's not all research is created equal. So you kind of have to read between the lines and see like, okay, what does this actually mean? But if you're at a 1-to-1 comparison of just athlete exposures, it happens more in competition, but also are they reporting it more in competition because they got to get back in, they need to perform more, whereas practice, like, well, let me wait a day and see how it feels. So there's a lot that goes into that. Ashley, any thoughts on that statistic?
No, I think you nailed it. It's those numbers could potentially be accurate, but when you add multiple teams to that practice number, that drastically changes the story.
So do we want to take a guess? You have the answer in front of you, but do you want to take a guess who had the highest competition and practice injury rates per 1,000 athlete exposures? What sport?
Gymnastics.
Oh, so close. It was football. All right. So they had in competition 12.09 injuries per 1,000 athlete exposures, and they had 2.54 injuries per 1,000 athlete exposures in practice, which is a pretty big difference.
I'm already mad. I'm already mad because I read the next line.
Oh, okay.
Tell me they're not just throwing a nose plug in for a face injury at practice and going back in. Listen.
Okay, so to give some context, the next sentence
you
is
have to come off the field when there's bloody nose during a game. You don't have to come off the field during practice. They run over. A student athletic training aide hands them cotton and they go back in for the next rep.
Yep. So higher proportions of competition injuries were head, face, and neck injuries when compared to practice injuries. And you're exactly right. They have to come off for those blood related things. So like any nosebleed they have to come off for that.
They're not reporting a single neck injury during practice. They come in 3 days later. They're like, my neck's been hurting for 3 days. I'm like, that's your upper trap. Like,
now I am curious. Were those reported in this data set? And I need to look a little bit further into that, but are you recording nosebleeds or are you recording primarily, stuff that you have to document? I'm interested to see, because that would, drastically change it. But Yeah, higher proportions of competition injuries were head, face, and neck injuries when compared to practice, which is interesting. Competition injuries were more likely to be concussions. Ashley, thoughts on that?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
They're going Well, they just have more instance of it's a game, so they're going to hit harder. Plus, the other team is really gunning for them, whereas their teammates at practice are hopefully not gunning for them. Hopefully.
I got my hand up because I can just see Katie twitching. Before we unleash
Yes, you
Katie on
can go
this,
first.
yeah, I think part of this too is I see more concussions during practice, but a lot of them are, I got hit on Saturday during the game and I'm having symptoms Tuesday now. I'm like, okay, so is that really during practice or did we get this during a game? So I feel like I see more during practice, but I think that's also skewed a little bit. Katie, go ahead.
Okay, listen, during games, you're watching. You can see it. You see a kid get hit, you pull him, you do your eval, you're right there. I'm sorry. There's no way. I'm not even going to fight another argument on this. You're not at every practice watching every rep that gets taken. There's no possible way to watch every player take every rep. When there are 11 guys on the football field, I can see most of them all at the same time and know when I need to evaluate a kid. The big hit happens, I know that kid needs to be evaluated. If they stay down for any amount of time, we have to be more cautious. A lot of times we have a lot more healthcare providers with us. We have to make the right call during a game. During practice, you have a lot more time. There's no eyes on you. Your kid can go down with a head or neck injury, and you can decide after a long period of time, okay, they're okay to get up. We've taken enough time to determine, no, this is not a cervical spine injury. No, this is not that. During a game, you have like 2 minutes before you're like, do we need the ambulance out here or don't we? And you're going to make the decision based on the eyes on you versus what time you would take outside of that environment. But you also don't have eyes on all 112 athletes practicing at the same time. And so you don't report every little nick and ding and things that happen at practice because you don't have eyes on them. And they come walking up to you and they're like, hey, my head hurts. And you go, okay, have you eaten today? What other things could be causing this headache? Because did you get hit? And then you don't, they half the time they don't even know if they hit their head hard enough. We have also evolved. We all have the Guardian caps. We have all the helmet technology now. There's been a lot of research. Coaches are much better about not doing as many contact practices throughout the week. So then their only full speed, full contact days are during those games. So there are a lot of things that play into this, but I've always had more concussions during the week than I did in games.
We probably shouldn't throw guardian caps into things that are helping prevent, but I get what you're what you're getting at.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you, but it's there.
And yeah,
It
my
is there,
only
yeah.
like other side of that argument is that in games I see a lot more high velocity blindside hits.
So many
And that's
more.
where I see the worst concussions. It's because the
I will
kid doesn't
nicely
see
say
it
this.
coming.
That's because the fewer A's that follow the number at your school, that as you go down from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2, the level of football experience, football play, football technique, all of that kind of goes down with it. There are great players at all of those levels, but there are also students who play football and they just think they need to pile drive the kid in front of them versus tackling appropriately the kid in front of them. And for whatever reason, targeting exists still in high school sports. They watch the adults do it and they think that that's the appropriate way to play their sport.
Well, big hits are glorified. That's what
Right.
all the highlight reels are. That's what coaches teach: physical, lay a hit,
Right.
make them feel it. And you're right. And I would add not just the amount of A's, but there are kids who are varsity for a certain school that would be JV for another school, and their heads aren't as much on a swivel, or they're just smaller. They haven't grown as much, and kids like being violent, especially boys, and they're going to lay a hit, and it is part of what it is.
I will preach this practice how you play until I'm blue in the face. But if you have one good full contact practice a week, that is usually plenty at the age that we're working with. But you got to be watching them and making sure that they are tackling safely and know what they're doing, because it makes the game better too. It improves the game of football. It improves whatever game we're talking about. But I have this conversation in my athletic training room all the time when they're like, "Oh, well, it's a game day today. I have to be taped. I go harder." And I'm like, "Well, we're not winning a state championship with that attitude, so let's readjust."
I'll let
Because
coach know that you're going
yeah,
harder today than you were in
I
practice.
will let coach know that you take practices off. Also, when you start cramping by the fourth quarter, I'll know why. But that is part of it. Is I've been blessed to work with some very good football programs, some very great football coaches who make sure that they get the most out of their contact drills. And that matters when it comes to game day. Again, also blessed. I'll speak this every day. I had a coach who watched film to help me rate for concussions. So we actually knew where our concussions came from because I had a coach watching film for concussions.
I wish there was like some kind of data that we could have to show like impacts to like the head or helmet area during practices that could help us figure that
Do you
out.
wish
Gosh,
that?
yeah,
Maybe
by
there's
golly, I
helmets
wish
or
we had
something
something like
that
that.
could have sensors in them, and they might be free to get them from a specific team or
Yeah, like and if you could like
something.
opt
That's
in to get
wild.
that data to help you with that, that'd be phenomenal. Well,
No
we're
promotions
gonna
here.
revisit.
We are not paid. We are not paid or sponsored by anyone.
Nope, but we will be revisiting the Rydell helmets
We
and
will.
chatting about that. I'm still very upset that and disappointed that we missed a major opportunity to collect data that could better our athletes' health. But moving on to the last part of this research article before we go way down that rabbit hole. I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, Ashley, because I have some thoughts on this, and it's kind of more of a read between the line thing again. Higher proportions of competition injuries cause the athlete to miss more than 3 weeks of play than compared to practice. So when they got injured in competition, they missed more time versus when they got injured in practice. Thoughts?
I would say that kind of goes back to what Katie was saying earlier of that in a game, they're usually hurt bad enough that they have to come out and they can't go back in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at practices, yeah, we just said what they're not going as hard at practice, so they're probably not getting quite as injured. They get a lot of like the ooh, that was bad, but I can walk it off and the next day I'm okay, maybe. That's much more of a practice injury. But in a game, they can't then take it easy once they got hurt. So they have to keep going 100% and then they get hurt worse sometimes. So I would say maybe that's the reason for that stat.
Yeah, I think
I will.
I'm pushing through plays a factor in that as well. Katie?
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to agree with Ashley, and I'm just going to segue you right into the next one. I did read ahead this time, so I didn't do it by accident. I used to report to the high school Rio data. Again, if you want to get better at your documentation, be in a study where you have to do your documentation and provide it for research purposes. That's why I'm a nerd, you guys. I've accepted it. But I used to report data for Rio, and that's how these numbers exist, right? I'm not putting in a bruise that happened during practice that they sat out for 10 minutes and jumped back in. I'm putting
Yeah.
in a quad contusion where they lost a week and a half of time because they
Valid.
couldn't go. Because what I'm reporting in the system is time missed injuries, not necessarily, I had a cut on my finger and
Injuries.
had to come off for a band-aid, type things. And so that Rio study is kind of where I learned a lot of my documentation strategies as well. But it does play into
Skews the
why
data.
I'm complaining about the data being skewed, is because I know where that information's coming from.
And I'm
And
so
one
glad
of
you
them is
brought that
me.
up because that is to bring this full circle. We've now identified that, yeah, we all agree that competition injuries are likely and more consistently more severe. Not always, but just looking generally. But we feel like we see more injuries in practice than competition. I think we see more issues that we have to look at. I think we don't identify a lot of them as injuries. How many times do kids come and be like, this hurts? I'm like, okay, you're fine. And then I don't like, it's not something that rises to the level of time lost or whatever, but I'm still seeing 3 times as many athletes because they just are either getting ahead of it or they just don't know what an injury is yet and what pain is. So I think that's kind of where the data doesn't support what we're seeing because we don't document all those minor things that we see. Now, if we looked at evals per practice versus competition eval, it would be a whole lot more practice. But when we look at injuries and what's actually real, I think that's where that data can get skewed as well. So kind of come full circle on that. Katie, you have
I was
something to
just
add
gonna
before I
say
go to
pain.
Rio?
Yeah. It's just the pain, right? We don't report every pain, and that's the difference is everyone comes in with a pain that is not always an injury, and every pain is not necessarily worth documenting, right? I have
Mhm.
a lot of athletes that have back pain that I teach them to stretch their hip flexors and now they're fine. Um, I do that 4 or 5 times a day. I'm not putting all of those in the computer. So
Especially now that track's coming on. It's like,
right. Yes.
golly.
Your hip flexors are tight. You have serious anterior pelvic tilt. Like, here we are.
I love when they lay on their back and I like look at their hamstring. I'm like, you can't get your heel above your head, like off the table. You're like maybe 20 degrees off the table. I'm like, God, we need to stretch your hamstrings. Okay. So going back to Rio, which is our next, that was what was used in this study by Rachel Reckel et al. In 2008. It is let me pull it up here real fast because I have it right here, I think. It is the reporting information online. And I believe it was it's through Daedalus now, or Daedalus has it on their website. But it was the high school reporting information online. So um, that's where a lot of this information came from. And it was reported, or it is reported by athletic trainers. So it's in the US, it's Youth Sport Injury Surveillance System. You can find the reports on daedalus.org/programs. Don't go to the Rio site because none of the links work. They don't go to where it needs, and they only go to 2011 2012. So to get all of them, daedaluscenter.org can get you that. And you can use that data to help make your decisions on coverage. You know, a lot of athletic trainers work for a larger organization that helps use that. And I know our organization uses Rio to help our coverage. But if you're alone and you're hired by the school or independently contracted, you need to show that you're not just coming up with stuff. So look at the collegiate injury rates from NATA. Look at Rio because that's specifically for high school, and use that to help justify where you're going, when you're going, what you're covering. And it's another piece of the puzzle to get you to where you need to be for your coverage, but it is a useful resource to use. Anything to add on Rio before we move on to the last research article? All right. Okay, so this one article is a loose term. It was a poster by Pizarro et al. And it was at the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, and it was in 2023. And their poster was the epidemiology of sports injuries among high school athletes in the United States. So they found that injury rates were the highest in football, 3.96 per 1,000 athlete exposures. And so this is kind of funny. I always preach to my students. I'm like, if you want to see the most injuries, come to football because it's like a car crash happening every play. If you want to see the second highest injury rates, come to girls soccer because they are absolutely brutal. Girls soccer was the second highest at 2.65, and then boys wrestling was 2.36. The injury rates were higher in boys sports at 2.52 compared to girls sports with 1.56, so almost a whole extra injury. And then injury rates were higher in competition compared to practice, which supports what the previous one saw. I think this study also used Rio. So, and they saw that sprains and strains were 36, almost 37% of injuries, and concussions were 21.6%. Those were the two most common diagnoses, which honestly, sprains, strains, and concussions kind of that adds up to, that's 59% of the injuries I saw. That I would say it feels like it's 75-80% of my day. That's a pretty big component of those. So any thoughts on this poster, Katie?
No, I agree with it. I
Yeah,
mean, football followed by girls soccer followed by wrestling. I
makes
I have no
sense.
complaints with that. Yeah. Look, I would throw lacrosse in there depending on the lacrosse team, but that's year and sport dependent, and they're probably equal with girls soccer, but the girls for sure are meaner.
They're so mean. It's great. I love it.
Brutal is the right word.
They are. I mean, God, the amount of times I've seen like slide tackles, cleat up, and a girl just front flips over. I'm like,
Have you
whoa.
seen the video? The hair pulling is what gets me. I'm like, how do they? Listen, I'm glad that I'm on the sidelines.
Yeah, and this article from the AAOS, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, also noted that there were more significant time loss injuries over the course of whatever time period that they looked at. So 39.2% and 34% of injuries resulted in time loss of less than 1 week and 1 to 3 weeks, respectively. And they noted an increase in the amount of injuries that needed surgery and an increase in the amount of concussions. They actually said a major increase, but I think that's also concussions is we're getting a lot better at identifying it and educating the public, and they're getting better at reporting them. Better, right? The bar is pretty low.
Mhm.
So don't I saw both of you pause as I was about to say that. I just know you guys are both like, don't say good. They're better at reporting concussions. So I think we're getting a little bit more on top of that. So, all right. Any final thoughts on prioritizing coverage? No? Okay. I think to kind of wrap it all up, use data, use your experience, but it depends.
Of course I do. I've been waiting to say this the whole time, and
Go after it. Go for it.
well, it's just you got to have discussions with your teams and your athletic director, and this is a daily, weekly, all the time conversation about, okay, well, what is happening today? Where am I going to be? I'm going to let all of the coaches know where I'm going to be today so that they know ahead of time, like, hey, we have cross country and football today. Katie will not be at the beginning of the football game because we have 2,000 runners running on a field next door. We have to make sure that somebody is there taking care of them, and then we'll cover football. But also, hey, there's a soccer game today. It's at the stadium. It starts at 6:00. I have to leave football practice at 5:30. Again, we talk about this all the time. Some of us have been doing this long enough. We don't do contact football after Katie leaves. They have learned. I had a wrestling coach who would not do contact wrestling. They would not go live if I was not in the building. So if I had to go, if I knew I was leaving, I would go up and say, hey, I have to leave today at X time because of whatever it is. They would go, okay, we're going to do all of our live contact before you leave so that we don't have to worry about it. And you make better friends. Make friends with your coaches. Like if they have the information ahead of time, it goes over a lot better.
Yeah. And I just want to mention, because we are talking about multiple schools and how coverage is managed, in a school district that has schools with varying sizes, like one size does not fit all, you cannot make the same coverage decisions, I think, based on the one general answer for every school. It has to be individualized to the size of the school, the number of athletes, the number of sports, etc. So I don't think these are cookie cutter answers, and they are all kind of varies on what you got.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the equality versus equity conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Equal means everyone gets the same sized box, even if one person's 6'10" and one person's 5 foot to see over a fence. Equitable means everyone gets a box that allows them to see over the fence.
No, equitable is the fence disappears.
There's just no fence, so we don't need
No fence
because everyone can see. Okay, well, with that succinct wrap up, we're going to move into the last
Put that
section.
graphic in the show notes.
Yeah, it actually is a very good graphic. I do.
It is, and that is the one thing I think about from those. You're going to cut this, please, Amy. It's the one thing I think about when I think about the stupid trainings that we had to do at Children's, like those damn training videos.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the graphic that really stuck in my mind.
It resonates with me.
It really does.
All right, Amy, we're picking back up here. So that actually is a pretty good segue to managing coverage across multiple venues, because that can count as I'm going to cover a neutral site stadium, or I'm traveling with my football team to cover that venue, but I still have kids practicing on school, or I'm covering campus today and there's practices in a 10-mile radius. How do we manage that? So, Katie, I'm going to throw this to you first. What's your experience with covering effectively on those campuses where you've got fields everywhere? And, do you try and stay in your ATF, or you try and get out to practices, but then you're running all over and nobody knows where you are? What have you found is the most effective strategy to manage that?
Yeah, I think you got to let people know where you are. Depending on what is happening, I'm a big proponent of staying in the athletic training room so they know where to find you. a whiteboard that says I'm headed out to football, find me on the soccer field, find me on, some people have the nice little graph where they have the dot and it says your athletic trainer is here today. That's great for you. I'm not capable or have never made a poster like that. I have a whiteboard and it says check outside. Um, but a lot of times I'll have a calendar up that's like I have a whiteboard calendar that says, home game is softball today. So that if I'm not in the athletic training room, they know they have to come out to softball to find me. I've always said, just call my cell phone. In my current athletic training room, our service sucks. So we say, just keep calling. Just keep calling. If you don't need 911, just keep calling because eventually, whatever, Apple, whatever gets through and it connects to the Wi-Fi or whatever it does. And it finally comes through as long as our phones are on the Wi-Fi for the school. But we are in a dungeon where it's just cell phone service is blocked. I've had multiple conversations with you got to know where the nearest landline is. Schools still have landlines, use them. I've been at places where it's a radio and I've carried a radio on me my whole shift. So it's just dependent. But at the beginning of the day, especially busy days, if I have 6 games going on that day, I've done the video of everything the light touches is yours, because I had all of my fields playing at the same time. It was like, we've got 2 soccer games going on at the same time. We've got a softball game on the backfield. We've got 2 football games going on this side. I don't know how we had 2, but whatever. And it was just like every field was full of athletes that day. Track and baseball and whatever are all going on. And I'm like, I am one singular person. Call me. If I don't answer, call again. If I don't answer after 2 phone calls, it's because there's an emergency happening and I'm dealing with that. I will get to you as soon as I can. If yours seems more emergent, you call 911 because I've already called them. I have in fact had 3 ambulances show up in the same day because that's just how the day went. And it's awful. And you're just like, boom, ambulance, boom, ambulance, boom, ambulance. And they're like, what is happening? And we're like, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know what the moon is doing today, but it is hindering my performance. But it is, every coach has to know, and you go up to every coach, not the head of the program, the individual coaches. The C team soccer coach has got to have your phone number and know to call you. The sophomore baseball coach has got to have your phone number. You go out and you tell track, like, hey, I'm doing the best I can. We're going to be wherever, if you can see the golf cart, that's where I am, and hopefully you have a golf cart. Because if you don't have a golf cart and your little legs are working as hard as they can to get you all over the place, I hope someone's bringing you food and energy. But it's a matter of just, they have to know your plan ahead of time and just have that plan, stick to your plan, find a central location if you can, or pick the sport you're going to be at. Like if I have soccer, I'm going to try to station between the 2 soccer fields and I can maybe see baseball through a fence or something, but how can I be the most visible or see right? I like to see the injuries as they occur and hopefully get there quicker. It's not always feasible, but how can I be at the most available spot, especially for outdoor events? Indoor events, I bunker down in the athletic training room and hope they can find me there. And I let everyone know, if I'm not in the athletic training room, something happened on one of the courts or in the wrestling room or in the pool or wherever, or the cafeteria, because that's where practice is today. And so if I'm not there, have your athletes wait, or if they come back to practice, text me. I'll get there as soon as I can.
And in the fall, you've got volleyball inside and you've got all these sports outside. It does make it hard. And it's almost one of those things where you want to get out to the practices to kind of, let's say there's not a lot of like JV games, because I agree with you 100%. Put yourself wherever you're most visible and just triage and do the best you can. But on those normal practice days where like nobody's gone, everyone's on campus, you got teams everywhere. I treat those days as I'm going to be in my athletic training facility, treating kids, trying to get them healthy. If there's an emergency, cool, call me. I will come on out. But it's almost like I don't want to go and just watch one sport because then the other sports don't know where I am, and that actually delays me getting to them. So it's almost like me not going to cover a sport allows me to cover all the sports better because I'm more accessible and like I kind of stay in the middle of my spider web so I can go any direction any time I need. But then you lose I'm going to see the injury. But then how often do we actually see injuries at practice? Not very often because there's so many practices, so many different places. We're trying to do so many different things. So there's a lot to take into account with that. But I agree with everything you said. I think it's very good points. Ashley, anything to add to that?
No, I'm the same way. I try to hang out in my athletic training room so people can actually find me. If I leave, try to write on the board where I am, but also like call me if needed. um and then for my outdoor sports, when I have like multiple things going on at once, I do love my current school because it is one walking path and all the fields are around it.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
nice.
I can post up in the middle with my golf cart and just kind of like scan the horizon and just watch everything that's going. And oftentimes I can't even stay there because I get called to something, you know.
Mhm.
But yes.
Now, one thing I do want to add is, and this is maybe more specific to my school, but some other schools have it, like Ashley, yours with the fields being off campus. I have middle school that my teams would practice at. Well, team, it would always be the same team because the coach was a teacher there, so it was easy for him to just stay rather than get all their gear over. And I would schedule time, like I'd say, okay, cool, I'm gonna cover everything, get everyone started, and then I'm gonna leave campus, come to your school. Everyone knows, like I send out a group chat, like, hey guys, I'm going over to this school to help cover this sport for a little bit. That way those athletes have access to me because a lot of them can't drive. So if they get injured, it's I'm just going to kind of sit here, or the coach is like, hey, can you come over? Or they didn't come in for treatment because they had to catch a ride right after school to get to their field. So I don't get to see them. So I would make time to say, okay, I'm going to get the practice to start, cover the first half, go over there for 30 minutes, make sure they're okay, do some evals, some treatment, whatever on those kids, make sure I got hands on them. And then I'd come back to the school for the last 15 minutes of practice for the early ones and see if anybody needed me. And it's just, you got to manage the best you can. But it's difficult when you have them off campus. And I think, like you guys said, the main thing is communicate, text. Mine was so far away that the walkie-talkies couldn't reach the athletic field. They could only reach maybe the softball field and the tennis courts. But it definitely couldn't reach baseball, definitely couldn't reach the athletic field, definitely couldn't reach the middle school. So I used my phone a lot, but it's easy to be working on somebody and have my phone ring, and I ignore my phone all the time when I'm doing stuff, and then I miss a call because I don't even feel it because I'm concentrating on something else, or I'm doing concussion eval. This has to wait for one more minute to let me finish this part of it. So it's difficult, but yeah. Ashley,
I
do you
think
have anything to add there?
consistency.
Yeah, be consistent, whatever you do.
Yeah. Like if you're covering baseball, be in the same place at baseball every time. Like if you're in the dugout, you're harder to find. If you can be outside, just outside the dugout, or near the fence or whatever, like, but consistently, like in the basketball gym, I'm always in the same spot. When you're outside at games, be in the same spot. It makes you easier to find if they're physically walking around looking for you. Hopefully that's more of like a coach's calling. And then again with the communication, I can't tell you the amount of times where like I've like looked at who was calling and just answered, been like, I'm not there. And they're like, okay, thanks. And hang, like they just, that's all they wanted to know. Are you here today or not? Because they just didn't remember. Right. And you can tell a freshman soccer coach as many times as you want, hey, I have to leave for this. They're still going to call and be like, are you here? Nope, not there. I've gotten, I call at 9:00 at night. I'm like, why are you still practicing? And they're like, well, we had an injury. And I'm like, noted.
So it sounds like you're relying, and I think a lot of us rely on our coaches a lot. Like there are eyes and ears on the field. And I always told them that, I'm like, you guys are there all the time. I'm not. I need you to tell me what's going on. But I know we still have some athletic trainers that are struggling with having the coaches kind of be their eyes and ears. And let's say you have a ski team that's practicing on the hill, or you have a swim team that's practicing in a swim area, or you have wrestling that's practicing an offsite, or gymnastics that practice at a gym and not on your site. You got to really have
those are called pools, swim areas. Those are called pools.
I couldn't think of it. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep on moving on, throw some words out and hope nobody notices, but thank you for calling it out. Pools. So how do we get those coaches to buy in and help us and kind of know when to call 911, know when to call us, know what our schedules are? How do we navigate getting those coaches to be on our side to help us with that?
I think the best you can do is communicate with them, let them know you are there to help as much as possible, but you really do rely on them calling you for the help and letting you know what they need. And then you just have to sit back and realize that they're going to realize at one point that they really do need you and you are an asset for them. And if they don't, then it's okay. That's not on you. You can only do your best and do what you can get to.
Well, and they take these trainings on purpose. CHASA
Mhm.
mandates athlete safety trainings, concussion trainings. The schools have like first aid CPR training. There's a reason that you are taking those. And you are doing a disservice to yourself and your athletes if you are coaching a sport and not paying attention during those. If you don't know what requires 911, I hope the fire department makes fun of you when they get there. Um, that's my short story on it. If you call 911 for an ankle sprain, I mean, good for you for taking care of your athlete because you thought it was necessary, but also you need to learn what's an emergency and what's not, and let's not waste resources if we don't need to.
Katie, does that decision of where to be change if we trying to think of how to word this? If we are aware that a team culture, whether it's from the athletes saying, hey, you're fine, you don't need to see Katie, or if it comes from higher up with the coaches, maybe trying to instill more toughness and therefore downplaying injuries, does that knowledge of, hey, I know this sport is a little bit more of a risk of things not being reported, does that change our decision making on where we need to be?
It does not change my decision. I
Nope,
will
me
tell you
either.
this
Me neither.
100% of the time. I have no problem walking up to an adult and explaining to them that if they are choosing to put athletes at risk, they will not be coaching for much longer if I have anything to say about it. And it is a liability that they are taking on because I will be the one sitting across from them in the court of law that says I told them not to do this. And if they cannot understand that and your athletic director cannot understand that, I suggest you go to the next person in line and keep going until you hit the highest member of the school district who will listen to you say that person is putting athletes at risk and it is going to be a problem. Um, it's liability at its finest, and I am not coming to save someone's butt if they can't do it for themselves. If there is no reason that playing a sport should outweigh that athlete's safety. And if I have to have that conversation, I will have it nicely a couple of times before I take it to the athletic director, and we will have that conversation again. And if we have to keep having this conversation, I've been blessed. I have not had a single athletic director that was like, yeah, we're going to let him keep doing it that way. And if they do, it's going to catch them eventually. And if a kid has to die for them to see they're wrong, they're doing life wrong.
Yeah. Ashley, anything to add before I give my 2 cents on
You first,
it?
CJ.
Okay.
You first.
Um, I think Ashley, you've mentioned this on another episode, and I don't want this to sound bad, but care a little bit less. And I think the
Yes.
thought process behind that, and we've talked about it in our meetings as well, is you cannot control what other people are going to do. You can educate, you can do your best, and like Katie said, you can go above and say, hey, this is an issue, and keep on ringing that bell and waving that flag. But at the end of the day, these coaches are adults who are trained and they know better, and you have to give some amount of trust that they are going to do that. There have been, and I've had other athletic trainers say, well, aren't you being negligent if you know that they're hiding stuff and you choose to trust them, even though you know the outcome of that? And, the response that I've heard a lot, what just happened?
Something something fell off and I like watched it start to slide. I couldn't stop it.
So the response to that has by and large been, you can only do what you can do. And if the schools, you can only do what you can do. So you have to trust the coaches to an extent. And if there's an issue, try and get it fixed. But you can't just always be like, well, I don't trust this person, so they're always going to be messing up. So I always need to be watching them. At some point, you need to say, I've done what I can. I'll continue to do what I can to protect the kids' safety, but I can't force them to change this. I can't force the county at this point. I can't force the school, whoever it may be. Do your best, document it, and it's an unfortunate situation, and hopefully you find someone's ear that will be amenable to changing that. But you can't kill yourself just being like not trusting the coaches 24/7, because it's not sustainable.
And if they aren't amenable to fixing the situation, get yourself out of that situation.
Find a new job.
Yeah, like
find a new spot.
one problem can derail everything, and one bad coach should not put the whole school in a bad situation. But as an athletic trainer, if they're allowing one bad coach, they're going to continue to allow other bad coaches, and you should look at your employment situation and where you might better fit to better protect athletes, because you don't want to be stuck there.
Yes, that's very well said.
Yes, and I think our job is stressful enough that you need to let, like, stuff like this, you can't control it. You can only do your best. Then if there's nothing you can actually do to change it, you need to step back and let it go and only do what you can do.
Or
And
step back and leave.
Document every
leave.
ounce of it.
Yeah.
Everything you can do to put it on paper. Today's date, this is what happened. Today's
Yep.
date, this is what happened. And continuously document that to show proof that it wasn't just one time.
Yep.
It was this time too. This athlete said this, or have that athlete send an email, get it in writing. Everything goes by paper trail to the athletic director. Hey, just want to let you know this happened at practice today. Here's my foreseen problem with it.
Yeah,
But-
and don't take it personally. This is not a failing on your part. This is a culture problem. It is not a you problem. You are not the problem. You are good. Don't worry that you are not trustworthy. That's not the problem. So keep doing what you're doing.
But to wrap it back, don't go to protect that coach just because that's where you feel like you should be that day. Like you have all athletes' safety to worry about. You can't do it just because you're worried about one person. You have to provide coverage true to what should be being covered that day.
Yeah, don't let it affect how you do your job. And I think, Ashley, what you said is very important, because when you're in the middle of that, it's very hard to not feel like it's your failing. I didn't educate enough. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. Or am I overreacting, or whatever it may be. Understand that it takes two to get along. And if one wants something to happen, the other doesn't, you can't force that other party to change or act the way that you feel is best if they feel a different way is best. So if it comes to that, it's not a failure on your part, because it takes two to come to an agreement and decide on a path forward that's best. And if you guys can't see eye to eye, start looking at other jobs. Keep on documenting, protect yourself. But if it's just an area that they want an athletic trainer on site to decrease liability, but they don't actually want to do things to increase the athlete safety, then that's not a situation where you should be in. And you can educate. And hopefully if you leave and then the school's like, oh my gosh, we have a ton of liability, why did this happen? And they kind of take a look in the mirror maybe, and they say, okay, well, this is why our last athletic trainer left. Like, maybe we should change some things and take this a little more seriously, because we now are very liable because we have no coverage. So you can make a change by stepping away. And at the end of the day, you got to look out for yourself. So do what feels best for you, what is safest for you, what makes you happy, and don't kill yourself over that issue. Because I know we have a lot of athletic trainers who take that to heart, and it's something that I think we all struggle with at every school. So onto a little bit of a lighter topic, to finish this out. A lot of these fields, and don't even get me started on PRN coverage. There's nowhere for equipment stores. There's nowhere for anything. They don't even give you a chair. They don't give you ice. They don't nothing. But for our facilities, you might be at fields that don't have any equipment storage. You can't get there from your golf cart. You have to use your car. What tips, Ashley, have you found for transporting equipment efficiently?
Oh yeah, I live in my car and I work out of my car. That's that's how it was. I had everything set up in my car at all times, and my car was the golf cart because my fields were so spread out, like by miles, that I couldn't use a golf cart. So my trunk was my makeshift athletic training facility. It
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
was.
Mobile facility.
Yep, and that's what I made sure I always kept, like, a med kit and an AED and, like, a chair, all my warm clothes, everything I needed.
All the
It was
layers.
all in my car. And it's a rough way to be, but I think that's how it's just how it is
Hmm.
for those positions.
Yeah. Katie, how about you?
Listen, they make everything with wheels now. If you or find a handyman and put wheels on something, because everything with wheels. But I will tell you things that I've done. I have a hefty toolbox that gets wheeled out to football so that I don't have to. I mean, also had a golf cart. I currently have a golf cart. I've always had a golf cart. Except for maybe like 1 year where it wasn't working for whatever reason. So golf cart for sure. But when you don't have a golf cart, like, get an ice chest with wheels, get a kit with wheels, get something with wheels. I cannot say it enough, get something with wheels so you don't have to try to carry everything.
Yeah. If you have a
But I
Kramer
had
backpack, get rid of it right now and buy something
yeah,
with wheels.
right, for
Sorry,
not
Kramer.
joking. Not joking. um I have a hefty toolbox. It sustains like up to like 1,500 pounds or something ridiculous. But the heavier it is, it's heavy to push, but it wheels nicer. And I have had my students wheel it out to football every day, because then when I'm running around doing 45 different things, I know there's an AED, there's splints, there's blood cleanup, there's gauze, there's whatever you can imagine in this 5-drawer toolbox, that if I need someone to sit on it, they can sit on it for me to do the eval. It was kind of high. You probably wouldn't want to jump up there. But as far as like need it, if they need to sit down, they can lean against it. If all of these different things, as opposed to using a bench or using whatever. Use the athletes. I've rolled up to a lacrosse game and had to walk a mile just to get to the stadium, and I had 3 trips worth of stuff. And as soon as I started seeing my team go by, I'm like, hey, I know your bag's heavy. Come grab this. Do you want water on the field? You're going to have to bring a cooler. Do you want ice? You're going to have to bring the ice chest. Like, I need you guys to help me carry stuff. And I have no problem. Again, communicate ahead of time. I've called the head coach and been like, hey, there's no way for me to get all this stuff to where we're going. Can someone help me? Again, blessed. It's usually the head coach who's like, yeah, I'll come get it. And they come pick it up for me. Bringing stuff to football games, if you're transporting it all in your car, I'm sorry. Find somebody with a pickup truck. Somebody's dad has a pickup truck who can haul
Coaches
things
usually have
for
pickup
you.
trucks
Yeah.
too.
I for years I like bringing all my stuff, because then I know where it all is and things like that. But finally I gave in at one point and was like, football brings a trailer. Put it in the trailer. Like, I know they need space, but they've got space for the stuff, my stuff, to go in the trailer as well. Use the trailer, use your resources. Again, some of the smaller ones, make sure the team comes and brings their own water jug with them, because why am I bringing the water bottles and water jug for you? Your team can do that. It shouldn't be your responsibility. Talk to the school district or the stadium staff. Make sure, like, hey, we should be able to store 2 coolers on site at this stadium so I don't have to haul them back and forth all the time. Multiple schools use it. That's fine. Do not destroy these 2 coolers that I'm putting at the stadium so that everybody can use it. If you don't have that, like, somebody stadium management wise, if you Jeffco schools have 45 schools in your district, you guys provide water, I know that,
I don't.
but if you have, well, but you have the big blue water
Oh,
jug
at our
things.
neutral sites, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Well, at one of
Yeah,
them.
sure.
2 of
Both
them?
of them have them. Yes,
3
correct.
of them?
NAC,
Why?
Trailblazer, and Jeffco.
But
Yeah,
only
they
one
have
field
the
at
big.
NAC has the big jugs.
Valid. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
but they're providing water regardless, is what I'm
Mhm.
saying. There should be, within your neutral locations, there should be a way to have at least water stuff available for you to not have to haul that as well. Because as soon as you add 2 10-gallon coolers to the things you have to carry, now I'm at least 2 trips in. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I think it's just a matter of like, again, something with wheels, but or get a wagon. You guys, the wagons are
That
great.
also has wheels.
It does have wheels, but you can like it saves instead of being 2 trips, you can now down to 1 trip or things like that. Bring smaller coolers if you have to. All of that stuff plays into that. They make tables that fold up really small now. I don't trust them, but I'm certain they could support an athlete if they had to. Things like that. Just try to make your life a little easier.
Yeah. Ashley, anything to add on there?
No, that she was just giving me great ideas that I was like, "Ooh, we need to
You're
do
just
that."
jotting everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a couple things that have worked for me are because I started out with a tiny sedan when I moved straight out of college, so I did not have a lot of space to transport stuff, and I utilized the coaches a lot. I'm like, hey, I'm going to put this stuff here. Like, can you grab it and take it? And then I'll check to make sure it got taken, or I'll tell the freshman kids, hey, you guys are in charge of this, which is kind of scary sometimes. But if I know that they're going straight from A to B with no distractions and I can see them, I'm like, okay, it made it there. Or I'll text the coach and like, hey, so and so's coming with this stuff. Make sure it gets in the car, and then they would just get it every single game that I was covering for them. That helped a lot because then they get there, the kids unload it themselves. I don't have to deal with it. It's on the sideline for me when I get there. Perfect. I love what you said about water management. Have the teams do that. I've been a big proponent of I don't need to waste my time doing something that they can very easily do with their freshmen who aren't playing. So I have them fill up the water, take the water, supply it for themselves. I don't ever touch it, and it saves me a ton of time to do treatments, but also a ton of less time to have to transport, less things I have to carry, less room in my car I have to take up with all that water. So that's something they can easily do themselves. And I love the idea of leaving coolers. I kind of want to bring that up to our other sites that don't have the water where I work, and just leave them there and be like, okay, perfect. Like I don't need to be bringing that. And I actually have an ice chest, which I don't care. Peace and love, homie. Don't bring ice to games. That also limits some areas of storage. So I actually did that last night. I didn't have ice, and somebody's like, I just injured this. I'm like, okay, cool. And she's like, do you have ice? I'm like, no, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to move it when we're going to avoid anti-inflammatories. I got all the way through peace and love. I couldn't remember the last E, but I was like, it's not really relevant to you right now.
Because there's too many.
Isn't it like
E's.
educate?
No, it's elevate and educator and peace. Is it exercise?
I don't remember.
I don't remember, but yeah, that's something where if you're a proponent of avoiding ice for soft tissue injuries via peace and love, that's something where it limits your amount. Or you can just have a small chest where if somebody really, really wants it and the coach is getting upset that there's no ice, you can educate, and then just to save your butt, you can be like, here's a stupid bag of ice. There you go. It's the only one I brought, so share it between the whole team. One thing that I did, actually my first purchase, and this is because my preceptor had this, was a 3-stack, and then I made it a 4 eventually, of a Husky toolbox, and it had wheels on it. So Katie, you'll like that. And it was like my go-to. I just grabbed that, and I grabbed crutches, and that was it. That was what I took everywhere. And I had it for sport specific. So it had 2 big parts in the bottom that were basically just big areas with no drawers. Just you take the lid off and you can put whatever you want in there. And the wheels actually came off, so you could swap it out. They weren't like attached to that bottom part. It was a separate like wheel thing. So I'd attach the wheel to the bottom part, and for football, I'd have all my helmet removal equipment in there, my AED, my splint bag, like all the important stuff. And then I'd have a still big but smaller middle part that had drawers, and it was 2 small drawers and then 1 big drawer, and I'd have all my tape in there. And then I'd have the top one with all the first aid stuff, Band-Aids, gauze, all that stuff. So I knew exactly where everything was. It was super easy to access. And then when I'm covering things that aren't football, I would swap out that bottom bin, just move the AED, boom. And then it was my football / lacrosse. So it had all the helmet removal stuff. That was super easy. I just grabbed it every time. I'd restock it every now and then. It broke down so that I could easily put it in my car, because I just put the bottom one in first, and I put the other 2 still stacked on each other, and I just put them on the other side. And it was super easy. And I could break down, and instead of having just one thing, like Katie said, I could have an area that somebody could sit on that bottom one, because it was about 2 feet high, maybe 1.5 feet high, probably 2 feet high. So I could have people sit on that. I could take it down and put it under the table, put my first aid one on top of the table, put the taping one next to the table. So I had like almost a little ATF pop up wherever I went, and it was awesome. I loved it.
Have
And I've
you seen
seen
like the toolbox where it's like they just can I think they're orange and black. I don't know. Tools are based on color for me. I don't know which brand the orange ones are, but they're like the orange ones have like the stackable containers.
that's
And
what I
that's
had. It
kinda
was rigid.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had the rigid
Is
one.
isn't rigid the green ones though?
No, that's
No.
that's
Rigid's
Milwaukee is
usually
dark
black and
green.
orange and yellow.
Milwaukee's red.
Okay.
You're just getting all
Yep.
the
Oh
colors
crap.
wrong.
See, this is why
So
listen,
the rigid
I
is the orange and black. Milwaukee is the red. The husky is black and white, and then the green one is Ryobi. Is that what
Ryobi,
it's called?
yeah.
Ryobi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, fair.
And I
Listen,
have
I
a
do
black
anatomy,
toolbox
not tools.
that doesn't stack. It sideways expands, so it opens up and it just rolls open. So all three of my compartments are open at the same time, and I love it. It
Fine.
was $100 at Lowe's.
They're surprisingly cheap. I think
So yeah,
all
just
four
not
of
the
my
Milwaukee's.
boxes. No, yeah, they're pretty good. I was looking one last
Is
night.
it is
This nice.
DeWalt the yellow? Yellow is expensive. I know that.
Yeah. It was expensive.
Listen.
And hey,
Tools are
hey,
based on
extra
colors for Katie.
extra benefit of this is all of them are waterproof because
Yes.
they use
True.
these
Yes.
torque tools, so they have waterproof seals. So it's really nice to have on the sideline because if I have like my laptop or my backpack or whatever out and it starts raining, I have extra room in that bottom compartment. I just toss it all in there and it's waterproof and it's so easy. I don't have to have a what are those bags called? Foo bags, which
Yeah.
are a pain in the butt because they take up so much room and you never
They
use them
are.
and then they don't actually seal. So that's been like, then if I could say one thing for transporting equipment, it would be get a toolbox. I like,
But
the
be
stackable,
aware of
but-
how heavy you're making it because the amount of times I've seen people like load up a toolbox, like the big chest size ones, and then get to their car. And I'm like, please don't. You're going to throw your back
Yeah.
out lifting that into your car. Like, what? Don't do that. But the small ones where they're stackable and you can put one in at a time, they're great. And
Perfect.
so there's
And-
a lot of different ways to do it, is what we're saying.
Mhm.
But
Another
toolboxes are
plug-
usually a cheap option.
the toolboxes fit well on a golf cart. You can break them down. You
Ooh.
can strap them to the back. So you can always have them on your golf cart and then just take it off, put it in your car, go to the game, come back, put it back on the golf cart, and you have it there. So wherever you go with your golf cart, you don't have to grab your little kit. It's always on the back of it. It's really nice. Perfect. All right. Any final thoughts on anything we've discussed today? Going over multiple venues, going over prioritizing coverage. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Just do your best and be available by phone or radio or something, and you're gonna be
I was
good.
just going to say, I think what we say on every episode, communication is key. As long as you're communicating it ahead of time, you're going to be just fine. Have a cell phone, have a radio, and be consistent with it. Meet before the event, let people know if you're going to have to travel, let them know ahead of time. Give them a week's notice. Hey, on this day, the day before, hey, remember, hey, just so you know, if you have to leave, hey, I'm leaving right now, just so they know after that you're not there. Communication is the best policy for this.
Over communicate. Never be afraid to communicate too much. I don't think that's ever really an issue. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for today's episode. Hopefully you found this helpful, especially for those of you who are kind of on your own or starting at a new school, or those of you who just graduated and are like, how in the world do I set this up? Hopefully this was helpful to you all. Thank you so much again to Katie and Ashley for being here today and sharing their perspectives. I think this is one topic where it really does take a village to kind of figure out what's best. I don't think any one person can figure out all the right answers on their own. So having colleagues to rely on to help learn from their experience is super vital. If you guys enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to a colleague. It goes a long way in helping us. And we also like to hear back from you guys so that we can keep on making the show better and more relevant for you and what you need. New episodes are released every other Friday, so be sure to check back for the next one. And until then, as always, thank you so much for listening and take care.